Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Enhance Your World show. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Alba. Larkin will hopefully be joining us shortly. Today, we're going to talk about um, an interesting topic, of course, forgiveness and faith. Um, and I think they go hand in hand. I think they're part of duality because it's really hard to move forward when you're hanging on to the things of the past. And we all hear the advice, oh, let it go. It's already happened. There's nothing you can do about it. And learn the lessons, take the lessons, and move on. And that's something that I've practiced in my life for a lot of years, most of my life. Realizing that everybody's showing up the best they can and the circumstances that we're showing up as, leading with the best of intentions. But sometimes we don't show up the way we want to. Part of our purpose here in life isn't always the doing part, but the root, the foundation is within our being. And when we have energetic blocks or sticky energy, basically from the past, because there are things that we didn't heal from, we tend to have experiences that show up to remind us that we haven't fully healed yet. And when those circumstances do show up and they don't seem to affect us mentally, emotionally, physically, relationally, financially, those types of things, we've learned our lesson. We've learned to harmonize that. And even though sometimes things don't work out, they don't tend to have that great of effect. They don't bother us as much. They don't stick with us a little bit, I've over the last year had a great opportunity to heal from some past stuff, from my childhood, with the way I was raised, and not always having the emotional support that I wanted. I was suppressed a lot. I was, called names a lot, too sensitive, or, hypochondriac, or, those types of things, because I was trying to vocalize the emotions, the things that I was feeling within. And, my parents just didn't have the space at the time to really connect. And it's been an ongoing process of healing, over 20 plus years, intentionally working really hard through personal development, mindset training, spiritual practices, meditating, breath work, doing workshops, getting certified in different modalities and things like that, because I always knew that my purpose in life was to help other people feel better, help other people overcome their circumstances, their conditions. And I've been pretty successful doing that in a lot of different areas, whether that was finance, whether that was helping them build a business, whether that was helping them to live their passions out as a musician, actor, actress, comic, as a talent. And really helped develop a lot of ways to do that. And so sometimes it gets a little overwhelming because there's so many different ways and so many different directions to go and to grow. We're all unique to the degree of our perception and perspective. And at the same time, there's a lot of commonalities within the humanity, our collective humanity. And so that's why I created the Gauge Your Life method, based on universal principles and practices, because those are the ones that I used and have helped me grow through the challenges, the circumstances, the redirections, the the robberies, the, failed businesses, the failed, I wouldn't even call them failed relationships or even failed businesses, because they were successful to the point that they were meant to be successful. And it's only through forgiveness that I've been able to learn from them holistically, energetically, going into the source and not creating new stories. There was a lot of parts of my life that I kind of held a chip on my shoulder, or like people not showing up when they said they were going to show up, or didn't do what they said they were going to do. And when we tried to have conversations about that, so we could just pick it back up and move forward, there was separation, there was emotional upset, there was things that kept us from being able to move forward in a harmonious way. And over the last few months, I've been very blessed to see some of those results showing up in my life with, my ex-wife, with my family, with, old relationships and partners and friends. And really, I was given a compliment this morning about how they've noticed, even though I mentally knew about grace and understanding and compassion, and could mentally explain it and communicate it, and, say, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want, that I'm truly embodying that now. And it came through a lot of heartbreak. It came through a lot of disappointments. It came through a lot of shadow work, and doing sacred ceremonies, and, all the various different things. So I had these new awarenesses to start over, to get a new beginning, to start fresh. I would have never considered myself a very religious person growing up. In fact, I, for a lot of years, considered myself an atheist. And so faith was not something that I focused on that much. I believed that it was going to happen, but my belief was limited to my mindset. So when things didn't show up the way I was hoping them to show up, or things weren't moving as fast as I had expected them to, or, there was challenges or whatever, a lot of times I would have an emotional response to that, and that never helped. Not once did getting angry and yelling and screaming and help the person that I was trying to relate with. I shared this story a few weeks ago about my father and I. And when I first went through my awakening and started looking at my childhood trauma, like, I tried to have conversations with my parents about it. And, I was met with a lot of resistance. And, I was sharing a story with my father about some things that were going on. And I was really pumped about the outcomes. I thought that I did a great job, that I got, did the best that I could. And I was really excited and was sharing that with him. And I didn't even get to finish before he'd cut me off and, threw his opinion on top of it. And when that happened, my anger came out, and I just went off, and I said some pretty mean things, and, shared my disappointments with him of, him as a father. And, all I really wanted him to say was, you did a good job. You're doing the best you can, like, good job for doing that. And maybe the circumstances could have been different if you would have done it a little differently, or maybe that was the circumstances that were meant to be. But anyway, I never got that as a kid. I never got that reassurance. I always got, well, you can do better. You should do better. Oh, you got, all A's, but the C, you need to work on the C. You got to focus on this thing, the lack. And I think a lot of us go through that in life. As I've worked with a lot of people and clients, these stories come up a lot in our healing process of where we weren't accepted the way that we wanted to be accepted. We weren't nurtured and supported and encouraged the way that we had hoped to be. And so that brings up a lot of stuff, right? And you just carry that carry that with you, and you're used to people disappointing you, maybe you're or people not following through with what they were doing. And integrity is a big thing for me, and being accountable. So maybe we intended to do something, but it didn't turn out the way we wanted to, or maybe we didn't get to do it at the time frame that we were wanting to. Just acknowledging the fact that we didn't get to meet our own standard, it to me is a form of forgiveness, because it's an opportunity to say, yeah, in the past I didn't meet that expectation, I didn't meet my promise, I didn't keep my word, and I apologize for that. But now I'm in a place, and I have the opportunity to correct that now, to make that right. And sometimes that does take time, and we don't really have control over time, in the way of condensing time frames, and that's a lot of the concern that I have with this new somatic movement, and all this stuff works really well. But the thing is if we're doing it to create an expected outcome, and that's not showing up for us yet, how do we keep the faith? How do we understand that every redirect, every failed attempt, every challenge and circumstance is leading us to the place where we want to be? Everything eventually works out as long as we continue to work it. And that was something that was very present in personal development, entrepreneurship, that type of thing. Is you have to show up. There has to be, you have to be there. You have to put skin in the game. You have to keep your commitments. You have to do these things. And as a young entrepreneur, sometimes I would overpromise, and that would leave me either not able to meet certain standards, or I was exhausted, which meant that it was easy for me to fall out of my center, and challenges came in. So, talking about forgiveness, really what it does is it helps us release the past of met and unmet expectations, right? Because, for me, a lot of times, a lot of my heartbreak, a lot of my hurt, a lot of those things were because things were going the way that it felt like they should be going. As an intuitive, as having some level of telepathy, and my human design is a projector, so I tend to be able to see big things and big visions, and far down the road. But those are roadmaps. And the reason gauge for me works so well was it was like a compass. So as I'm walking through the experience of life, good, bad, and different, I have these practices and principles. So as life's showing up, I'm able to be fully present as best I can. Again, I've had past stuff that I was carrying with me, and I would get triggered, and I would get into emotional, reactions and things like that. But it was after that circumstance, after I was able to regulate my nervous system, after I was able to come back to gratitude, come back to center, come back to my intentional ways of being and believing, that I got to see the lessons for the lessons that they were. Now, nothing is insurmountable. Everything is, in my belief anyway, every circumstance has the ability to be overcome and to be healed. And I believe that, letting go of a relationship permanently is a short-sightedness. Sometimes it's necessary. I've had to let people go in my life because we weren't moving in the same direction. We didn't have the same vision. We didn't want to live the same lifestyle. So, when I got sober and my friends didn't want to get sober, it just naturally we drifted apart because we just didn't have that much in common anymore. Not that I judged them for their walk or anything. It was just, it just wasn't what I was wanting to do. I didn't want to go to the bar and get smashed, and that was what they wanted to do. So, I would go and hang out for a little bit, and then, I'd eventually get bored, because, I wasn't getting intoxicated like everybody else. And, maybe there wasn't, a good band or some entertainment or something there to keep me engaged in the atmosphere, and the challenge and annoyance of people being intoxicated would get too much. So then I would just excuse myself. And so eventually those friendships and they just faded. That there was no heartbreak, there was no deciding factor. There wasn't necessarily even a conversation over it. It was just, you quit call and you quit contact. Hey, Larkin.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. I'm driving. I finally got good reception. Powerful topic today. Keep going.
Thanks. So, finding that forgiveness within ourselves and, is the way to strengthen our faith. Because if we're always focused on the rear view mirror, as Larkin's driving, I'll use that analogy. If we're looking in the rear view mirror, we're not looking forward. And our faith can be clouded by the things that haven't shown up for us yet. But when we learn the ability to release what is no longer serving our highest path, our highest vibration of being who we are, how we are, why we are, where we're going, all those things, our vision of where we want to move towards the future. Well, then, to me, you're living in faith, understanding that we do have some level of will, but ultimately the collective will, the universal will, is much stronger than an individual will. So, having the ability to see both sides of it, both perspectives, helps create clarity of how we need to show up in each and every moment. What are your thoughts on this, Larkin?
Well, I think you're spot on. And we always are totally in sync with what we want to talk about. I was just on with a client actually earlier today, and we were talking about, just for a small portion of the coaching session, but we were talking about that, that no matter how many times you remind people or you remind yourself, this is where it's important to differentiate between your conscious awareness, the observer behind your thoughts, as Eckhart Tolle says, and your mind, your cognitive mind. It's really important to decipher those, because it's a constant reminding of ourselves that we don't want to be living our lives based on what has happened in the past. And your egoic mind is always trying to keep you in the past or the future. And when you're in the past and the future, there are so many things. Like, my clients have an exercise we do where they have to literally write out different things that the mind prevents you from doing when you're in past and future. And if I were to ask them, what does the mind prevent you from doing it, they can't answer. But if I ask them to write what being in the future, stuck in the future does, and what your thoughts being stuck in the past limit you from doing or prevent you from doing, they can list a lot of them easily. And so we've got to remember that presence is that consciousness, that observer behind your thoughts. And so, just to validate and verify everything you just said, Chris, most people don't even realize, even this is why I work with people for, a year, 2, 3 years at a time, because their evolutionary process of transformation requires this awareness and your ability to consciously choose to be in that observer behind your thoughts. To observe your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts is just aspects of your experience.
Mm-hmm.
When we are going through our daily lives, we have the natural tendency, if we're not consciously choosing otherwise, to always make our decisions and how we perceive our experience based on the past. We always do, because we are focused on, well, this always happens to me, and so why would it be any different?
Right.
Or we're conditioned to say, well, I'm afraid to do this again because the last time it happened, or I'm never going to eat it. Now sometimes it's smart.
Right.
Sometimes you go to a restaurant 2 or 3 times. This is why our cognitive brain has this ability. This is part of our survival, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's smart to be able to say, wow, the last 3 times I went to this restaurant, I got food poisoning. Maybe I shouldn't go there again.
Right. Right.
It has its place, but
Right.
we tend to do it with everything.
Right.
And this tends to this becomes our isolation, our
Mm-hmm.
prison, our self-judgment, our inability to forgive, our driver for procrastination, our indecisiveness, all the things that make our lives miserable. It's what locks us into our belief about abundance and money.
Sure.
And it causes us to become addicted to things. So I think this concept today of talking about faith really expands to it connects to so many different levels of transformation and community. I love what you were talking about too, with the collective and the individual.
Mm-hmm.
The collective doesn't exist without the individual, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we are this oneness. We've been given this opportunity to have this individual free will. What I do want to say to that is, if we're looking at it as though the collective is stronger, yes, the collective is stronger as far as the direction of our evolution as a species or as a soul,
Mm-hmm.
collectively. But
Mm-hmm.
the evolution of that happens and it changes because of our ability as individuals to choose something outside of that collective. So it's
Right.
something we're a part of. Yes, we're a part of it, but as each of us make different choices, as each of us choose what faith means, and I don't mean that in a religious term, a part of that means having belief in the process and faith
Yeah.
in the process. And one of the things that I really emphasize in my coaching, and then I'll shut up, but this all goes together, which is why I talk so long about this stuff. It's all tied together. And you can't just do one little piece of it. If you start looking at life as a process instead of just each little scenario, where if you're having a good day and things are going the way you want them, then life is good. And if you're not, life is terrible. Well, that's not true. Sometimes things are always working out for you. But
Right.
whether you experience that in a positive or a negative manner, that's actually your choice. And if you're experiencing it in an uncomfortable or a negative manner, guess what? It's because there's something that life, the universe, your higher self is trying to alert you to. It's
Right.
trying to get your attention for it. It's trying to get you to change and outgrow a comfort zone. So when are we going to start seeing the things we don't like and our challenges and our obstacles as part of an important process as road signs?
Right.
Instead of, look what life is doing to me.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of us want to learn strength, right? And then we go through a challenging time and we forget this is the opportunity to learn strength.
Right. or to remember how strong we are.
Absolutely. Or resilient, or whatever the key term is that we're trying to attach our beingness to, right? Because it's more than the mind, and I think that's the challenging part, right? um, is living beyond the story can be challenging because the story itself is the limited version of the mind. Um, and things show up in a certain way, and given the opportunity to reflect, and I think this is where meditation and mindfulness and those types of things can be so valuable, is when we really take a time to sit with it, it shows us new things, you know. Like a week ago, I guess it was, right before I went to bed, we had a real powerful meditation at our meditation circle. And I laid down, and like all of a sudden, all the visions of me as a child and being told, you know, I'm not good enough, or I'm not cool enough, or I'm not tall enough, I'm not cute enough, I'm not this, or I'm not that, or, you know, they started playing, you know, and I'm like, oh, here we go. Here's some stuff that I haven't been able to access for a really long time, because for a lot of my life, my childhood has been um, uh, fragmented, and I was seeing things and processing things energetically that I hadn't thought about as mattering, as a big deal, or, you know, whatever, because I was taught that, you know, it wasn't. But once I acknowledged it, that it had an effect, like I could just feel the weight and my tension in my body just dissipate. Um, and I think that's an important, I think that's an important thing to look at, and why I like to talk about energy so much. Because it goes, there's an energy behind the story, but we're creative, so we can recreate a story to give it a new meaning, to have a different outcome. You
Right.
know,
Yeah. And it's the mind and the body. I mean, what you're describing is the mind and the body.
right?
See, so we are, when we're incarnated, we are more complex. We have been complicated, right? We have been,
Right.
we're added a pseudo reality, the ego. We are given a story to play by, just as though you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. We're given different signs and symbols with which to recognize what the messages are in that life, to know how to quote unquote play the game. So that could be health issues, mental, emotional issues, feelings of the mind and the body. Our intuition becomes our conscious voice within that physical form. And so you can see there's a beautiful translation here from the true eternal consciousness and wisdom that we are, to translate into this human form. And, you know, we spend our entire lives making that translation. Now, if we, why I was saying remember who we are, if we remember who we are versus learning things, I mean, yes, there's things to learn here as humans. There's just things you're going to have to learn as a human. But a lot of what we're learning, we can also remember.
Right. It's
And
like a relearning.
and when we remember it, then we learn it a lot faster. So, you
Mm-hmm.
know, for example, when I was doing the martial arts, so much of that was, I remembered it from so many lifetimes of doing the same stuff. And so in remembering who I was, the martial arts became something that it's like, oh, okay, I'd always done it. Even though, and it was funny because I would remember, oh yeah, you know, like, oh God, I got to retrain this body to do that. And it was frustrating because I knew what it was. I knew what I was doing. I knew why, but I was having to retrain that body. You know, it's kind of having to retrain yourself after you've had a stroke, or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, had an accident. You're having to retrain those neurons because you've got that physical form.
Right.
And, you know, where does faith, you know, fit into all of this? Well, I think you guys need to go back and really ask yourself what really is faith, and where is your belief in and understanding of your definition of faith? Where has that influence come from, and where is it something you are innately feeling from the inside out? What do you believe it to be? What do you know it is? Is there a difference? Do you know what that difference is? And how are you going to morph your identification with faith, and faith in what, to make it work for you? I mean, a lot of it is, a lot of people say, well, I lost faith because I believed in something for decades and it never panned out. I mean, I was one of those people, but I don't, but to me, it didn't have necessarily that same impact. Faith isn't there just to have a time limit. Just because something doesn't happen in a time limit you think it's going to happen doesn't mean, that's the ego saying, well, scratch this off now because it didn't happen. So you've had faith in something that never happened. You had faith in a relationship that didn't work out. So what? That doesn't mean your faith was wrong. What about looking at faith as having a different purpose? Faith isn't just there to meet up with the time frame that you believe something should happen in. Maybe that thing you wanted to happen wasn't for the best. How about stepping back and looking at faith as something that you have faith in the process? You have faith in why you're here. You have faith in whatever you believe. If you're atheist, fine. Believe in yourself or the process. If you're religious, believe in whatever the hell that is. If you're spiritual, believe in, I mean, it doesn't matter. That's your mind putting the labels. It doesn't matter. The point is everything is consciousness. So have faith in the process, if nothing else, and in the fact that you're here for a reason, and get to know yourself. Have faith in who you know you are, not as a person, as the consciousness that is animating that person.
Right. So, absolutely. I mean, to have a faith that everything's going to work out the way it needs to work out, still allows for the mystery to show up.
And there will always be mystery. It's always mystery because we're human.
Right. Yep. Yeah, we don't have total control.
Well, this is where Eckhart Tolle and a lot of the other master teachers throughout history have discovered and tried to pass on. Get comfortable not knowing. Get comfortable not knowing.
Right.
And, I love doing readings. I could do readings all day long. But readings need to evolve. People coming for a reading need to, so many of them are in a desperate place, just wanting to know the outcome. Again, what is this? This is us being pulled into the mind saying, you'll feel more secure if you know what's going to happen. Of course. I mean, the ego will feel more secure if it knows what's going to happen. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that you have to know? No. And the more we believe that, the more we become insecure, uncomfortable, bitchy, fussy, depressed, whatever the heck it is, when we think we don't know. But here's the bum. When you know, do you really know? I mean, I tell people in my readings all the time, nothing's set in stone.
Right.
I'm always shown 3 main outcomes, and however many outcomes are more likely, and then they fade off in the distance, like those multiplying mirrors that they used to have in dressing rooms. And I'm always given guidance as to, if you want this outcome, you need to do this. If you want that outcome, you need to change that. It always goes back to the responsibility of the person I'm reading for. Mm-hmm. And they don't like that. They do not like that. People want the answers. And if you're not going to give them the answers, and, oh, you were a terrible reader, you didn't know. Well, no, that's not how spirit works.
Right.
That's not how your higher consciousness works. One of the reasons you're here is to not know. Isn't this crazy ironic that a psychic medium who's been doing this her whole life is saying this? This is why I had so much resistance to prediction for so long. And I'm really good at it. But keep in mind, nothing's set in stone. And the resistance doesn't come from not being able to see the outcome. The resistance for me comes from the fact that people want to make their decisions based on what they think the outcome's going to be, instead of doing what they're here to do in their life, which is make the decision not knowing. Drawing up from deep within themselves and taking the guts to make the decisions not knowing, because that's part of growing. It's part of taking a risk. It's part of getting out of our comfort zone. And the bomb I was talking about is, do we really know? I mean, we marry somebody and we think, oh my God, we got 50 years with this person. Do we?
Right.
Lifelong life together. I mean, my God, they could cheat on you in 2 years. Somebody could die the next month. I mean, the things we, so you're a billionaire. You're set for life. Are you really? I mean, I guess my point is all these things that we think are true, that we are convinced we know, we don't know.
Right.
We don't know anything. Let's get clear about that. We don't know anything. And that's really important.
And what a freedom in that, right? I mean, I like to say it all the time. I'm not smarter than the universe. I have my insight, or my what I believe is going to happen. That's why I'm moving towards that direction. But it doesn't always come to fruition the way I envisioned it, or because there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of different things. Thanks for your comment, Anne. And I understand. I mean, a lot of us have been told to stay away from negativity, and it does make us sad. It's also an opportunity to grow beyond that. So I did want to make a comment on that. I don't know if Larkin's able to see that while she's driving. Hopefully she's not paying too much attention to the comments while she's driving. And I totally get it. I've been there in my past. I've also learned a lot by going into what people would call negative. When people aren't willing to move past where they're at, you can't drag them with you without, it bringing you down. But at the same time, it can lead to some other insights and some other ways to overcome certain circumstances. My dad's a great example of this. He's very good at coming up with the worst case scenarios, and it trained me to do it as I was growing up as well. I don't know if Larkin meant to mute herself, but it creates the opportunity to see things maybe not from such an optimistic place, because maybe we're excited about an opportunity or a thing, and we don't take the time to discern some of the setbacks or obstacles. And so really finding that unity mindset between the polarities of positive and negative helps us find that center, and allows us to move in a different vibration. Every circumstance is unique, so I try not to give, absolute, this is the way you want to do it. And I can tell you that there's been times in my life where I was stuck in a certain vibration. I was really challenged over something, and I just couldn't get it out of my mind, and I couldn't stop talking about it because it was in my mind. And that can be toxic. I'm very aware of that. And what I really needed for me was someone to just sit with me and hear me out. not give me advice, not tell me what to do, not to jump on the bandwagon. Because a lot of times when people try to give me that, I want to fight it because I'm in that space, and haven't. Yeah, and to overthink, right? And
Absolutely.
that's where we got to get in the mind, or get in the body, rather, and do some of these embodiment practices, do breath work, do meditation, go for a walk in nature, go take a shower, cry, yell, scream, dance, anything you can do to express that energy will help the mind shift. I think those are important skills that I wish as a society we would teach the younger generations. And I think we're getting to the point that will happen, especially with, people our age, meditating and doing these things. The kids are going to see that, observe that, and maybe start implementing that into their lives at a younger age. So, I have faith that the future looks bright, right? As long as this new earth takes form, and there's going to be separation. But the more we can stay in that vibration of harmony, of understanding, of compassion, of grace, of gratitude, of unity, I think we have a better opportunity of being present to the now, and sending that ripple of effect forward into the future.
Absolutely. I think that the focusing on hi Joanne, I'm on a broadcast right now, so I'll be off in a minute. I think the important thing, and I think something Chris and I should actually be doing, one of the workshops that we should be doing. You're okay, Micah. One of the events that we should be actually hosting is, Chris just mentioned, and connection to nature, right? And, that is absolutely so important that, one of the reasons we have, come here, buddy. Good boy. You can walk past him. Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Go for it. His stall's great. One of the things that is important, guys, is that, nature gives us everything we need. And, I've said this time and time again. I've said it on this broadcast. I say it almost every live that I have, and I cannot emphasize it enough. Those who want to control us and make money off of us and brainwash us, that have the money and the power to do it, have always throughout history done their best to separate us from nature. This has always been the case. And it is up to each of you as an individual to make sure that you establish that reconnection. I mean, I cannot say this enough. And one of the things that I really want to do this week, it really dawned on me. It's hard to be away from my rescue animals. I don't really have the time or energy to do it right now. But, those people that go away on those retreats and if you guys can find one, I mean, I don't have anything like this set up yet. So if you guys want to find one, please go do it. Go spend a minimum of a week. After a month, it will change your life. But a minimum of a week. You don't have to camp. You can stay at a cabin or something, but go on some sort of retreat with no television, no social media, no phones, where you are completely surrounded and submersed in nature, not the fake man-made society. And yes, I'm saying man-made, guys. I don't care if you're offended by that. I'm sorry. It's just a term. But it's a fake reality. And we are nature. We are not fake. So when we are trying to fit into a fake society that does not incorporate and work with nature, we are going to start having issues. I mean, they've done so many experiments with this with non-human animals. Psychologically, mentally, emotionally, we're going to be unkind. We're going to be, mentally and emotionally ill. We're going to be depressed. We're going to have issues with leadership. We're not going to be able to work together. I mean, this has been proven time and time again for thousands of years. And, we like our luxury, we like our convenience, and so it is very easy to rope us in with that. You don't have to go off and live in the wilderness to reap the benefits, but just a suggestion to try that type of thing one time so you can prove to yourself that we're not just making this up, so you can experience it for yourself. And, for me, it's my time out on the farm at the barn with animals, the hikes my husband and I take every day. I spend probably more time in nature, not as much as I should be right now, but more time in nature than I do away from it. And you will be a different person from the inside out when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a cure. It literally, nature is the great healer. Mm-hmm. If you have depression issues or anxiety issues or any of that, back, good boy. You guys need to get out. You need to get out in nature. And the fact that we live in a world where people are, afraid of ladybugs. And when I used to teach at the zoo, I remember having a group of inner city kids. And they were inner city, but they weren't that inner city. And I remember we were going to play a game on the grass. And they were afraid of the grass.
Mm-hmm.
And their feet had never touched grass. And they were like between 6 and 12 years old. Head down. Down. Good boy. Okay, go play. Sorry, guys, I'm releasing 2 of my horses here. But they were terrified. They were literally like between 6 and 10, maybe 12 years old. And we had kids hysterical, crying hysterically because they were terrified to have their bare feet touch the grass. So, this is something that is, how are we going to have kind treatment of animals and nature and each other if we're scared of grass?
Right.
Of course you're going to have people then coming out wanting to murder and kill animals because they're afraid of them.
Right.
Kill the spider, kill the mouse and the rat. And out the door goes what? Compassion. And here's the last thing I want to say on that, because I know I'm on another soapbox, but these things these are concepts, entire concepts that have to be shared in order to, translate them to the audience here. And the way we treat nature and animals ultimately is the way we treat each other. So if you're saying to yourself, I don't really care about nature, I don't give a shit about spiders, that's fine. To each their own.
Right.
Maybe you obviously didn't grow up having that, experience or opportunity to learn to appreciate them. Familiarity, tends to destroy fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not familiar with them, that's fine. But if maybe you're a person that says, I just only care about other humans. Well, if you care about other humans, then you have to care about and respect nature. Mm-hmm. For 2 reasons. One, the way you treat nature is the way you will treat other people. And if you notice, we are doing that. The way we treat our livestock and animals and dogs that misbehave is also how we treat one another.
Right.
We teach our kids to misbehave, and then we, then we set them up for failure, just like we do our dogs. We do the same thing. We chop things down, trample over things. We do that to one another, individually and collectively. So even if you only care about people, it matters. So anyway, enough said there, but it's
No,
very
and
important.
that's a good,
I think both Chris and I are very conceptual, so we'll take longer times to each share what we want to say, because we're trying to share with you guys. And forgive me, Chris, if I don't mean to speak for you, but we are both conceptual, and so when a conceptual person is sharing with their audience, they might talk a little longer, but they're sharing whole ideas with you. We're not just sharing words, we're sharing concepts and ideas that hopefully you guys can have as images and feelings as you're sharing with us.
right. That's a great point. And it's not just a soundbite, because it's broader than that. Sometimes that short little advice might make sense in the moment, but it might not apply either.
That's
In
right.
that moment, And I can understand, Anne, about being scared of bees. As a kid, I was allergic to bees, so I was afraid of their sting. And over the last few years, I've developed a really close bond with them. So when they're walking on me and crawling on me, I can let them be the
Yes.
bee. And I've yet to have gotten stung. When I've gotten stung is when I tried to squish them, or when I freaked out and tried to get them away from me. They stung me most likely out of self-protection. And humans work that way too.
Absolutely. No, they do. They really do. And I think it's going to be I'll probably long dead before this happens, but the ability to respect non-human animals as beings, the beings that they are, is really important as well. Hold on, Tempe, come here. We tend not to respect them as beings. Right. And we need to remember that they are beings. And, when we treat each other with disrespect, like there was an experience I witnessed in our barn a few days ago, and it was very disturbing to me. And this is a person who I think loves her horse, or believes she loves her horse. But with a lot of humans, there's this need to control, the egoic need to control. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, she went to do something on his face or whatever, and he moved his face away. And she scolded and reprimanded him, and she was like, "If I want to touch your face, I can touch your face." And it just made my heart sink. It made me sick to my stomach. It was just awful, because they don't have human words like us.
Right.
Who knows how she was doing it and how he perceived that?
Right.
Who knows why he moved his face away?
Right.
And there's all sorts of reasons why he could have moved his face away. They're herd animals, and when you're at certain angles, different horses will move their. I mean, if someone comes at me to, get something off my eyebrow or my cheek, I'm probably turn my head away too. I'm like, what are you doing with your face in my, hand in my face?
Right.
But to say to somebody like, if I want to touch your face, I'm going to touch your face. Well, we do that to each other too, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But what can the horse do? I mean, not much. Right. He's going to be tossed back in his stall, and later she was like, "Oh, I love you and good boy," and all this. But what that showed me was, I'm your owner. I'm the boss. I can do whatever I want. And I think she even said that I can do whatever I want to you. I can touch your face whenever I want. Well, okay. Let's just remember that how we treat others, that includes animals, is how we treat what we're doing to ourselves. That's always reflected within us, and it comes back to us. So, if you have pets or animals, it's a great way to practice. They tend to bring out your controlling aspects, because you can often get away with treating them in ways that you might have different repercussions with people.
Very true.
Right? So just throwing that out there so you guys can check in with yourself. What respect, and this sounds so silly to some people, but it's not silly. It's part of the keys in the road to happiness. What is your relationship with the tree, with the grass, with the insects, with your pets? How does that translate to your relationship in the workplace, with your children, your significant other, your parents? You will find, if you start looking for it, you will find a connection, because they're all linked together. And the common denominator is you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, and that goes again, like some of us weren't taught that, right? So when we learn that lesson, we have to forgive that we were ignorant.
Right.
And not in like, oh, I'm such an ignorant person, I didn't know any better, but like I wasn't aware. Okay, well now I can do better. I mean, I think that's a perfect analogy of that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And learn a deeper level of compassion beyond our sense of control.
Exactly.
Our willpower, yeah. So, well, we're about getting to that point.
What?
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't hear what you said.
I was going to say we're getting ready to hit the hour mark. So, is there any takeaways or anything you'd like to share?
Me, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think, my next step in this was going to be a call to action for people, is that in almost 20 years of coaching, what I find is even people that I share a mastermind with twice a week, that I have private sessions with, they still separate the coaching from their real life. Even though the reason I do it the way I do is to help them go through it and transform using their own life and the challenges that it brings. And I'm going to invite you guys to do the same thing. If you're really here to transform, and whatever it is your reason is for being here, listening to this is just the beginning, right? It's just the very beginning of what needs to be done. So what are you going to do with it? Have you taken notes? Maybe not. What are you going to do with what we discussed today? Are you going to just be a passive listener? Or are you going to take the next step? Did you take notes? Do you have goals and outcomes and aspirations for yourself with what you want to do? With this, can you see and recognize how this can apply to what it is that you're wanting, and why you're listening to this in the first place? All of these things are really good things to ask yourself, because just listening to this is not enough. Just listening to the broadcast and not doing anything with it is not enough. And it's up to you guys to actually do something with it now, and to take action, because it's what you do in private when we get off of here and how you make use of it that makes all the difference. Okay, so I think a lot of times we subconsciously think, oh, we heard this, we showed up for it, it's all great. Or I've had people say, yeah, I listened to so-and-so's podcast for a month, and I thought I got a lot out of it, but it didn't change anything. No, it's not going to change anything. What's going to change something is what you do with it. So what did you take away from this? I'll ask people, after a mastermind, what was your takeaways? And they can't tell me. And I'm going to sound like a real bitch here, but if you're serious about whatever it is you're here to get out of this, whatever it is you want to change, manifest, transform, heal from, break free of, whatever it is, why wouldn't you walk away and ask yourself, what did I get out of this? What do I need to do with it next? And that's part of this process. That's part of this training process, is training your brain to use the information and do something different with it. The passive listening is just the first part, but you want to be an active listener. And, most of you won't. Some of you are going to be like, oh, yeah, and you will. And that's why we have 2% of the population running the world, 5% of the population getting what they want in life, and the other 95% struggling. So my call to action to you today is, are you going to start the habits and repetitions and patterns to be that 5%? Or are you going to do what most people do and just maybe think you're doing something, take a little thing away, but not really implement? And I'm not judging you. Whatever you choose to do is fine. But if you want something out of this podcast, what are you going to do about it? Because it's up to you.
Right. Yeah, they're insights, and I do believe the subconscious is always listening. So maybe we don't cognitively have an awareness, and later it will come through for us. But I agree with what you're saying, Larkin.
Well, but what I just suggested though is, see, the 95%, the subconscious, is not only always listening, but it's always running your life.
Right.
So the suggestions I just made, what it does is it actually pulls up from the subconscious. So when people say to me, well, I don't know what I got out of it. Okay, because it's stored in your subconscious. So how do you think you make a subconscious conscious? You have to bring it to the surface.
Right.
So that can happen through exercise, yoga, meditation, travel, doing something different, journaling. It can happen through surrender, forgiveness, radical honesty. It can happen through disaster and trauma. It just depends on how desperate it needs to come out.
Right.
It is to come out, right? So get to it before it reaches that point where it's pushed on you. And one of the ways you do that is by intentionally bringing it forth,
right,
which is what I just shared with you.
Right.
So do all those things so that, and it's going to take practice, guys. It's not going to happen overnight, but make it a habit to learn how to bring things from the subconscious to the conscious mind. And one of the ways you do that is by sitting down with your notebook and saying, okay, this is really hard, but what are the 3 main things I learned from today's podcast? What 3 things triggered me the most? And what are 3 ways I'm going to apply this today, this week? And it's going to be maybe really tough. You might say, I don't know. Well, that level of difficulty that you might find answering it is the gap between your conscious and your subconscious mind. So in the act of making yourself answer the questions, you are becoming more able to take charge of your mind and to call out your subconscious into your awareness, which is where you can actually utilize it. So that's just a really powerful mindset tool. And I hope you guys will take that and apply it today.
Great. Thank you for dissecting that a little deeper.
Sure. Normally I have months and years to do that with clients, but that's just a quick, that's hopefully people will make real use of what we're sharing here.
Right.
I'm all about results. Let's get results here.
All right. Well, do you have anything else in closing, Larkin?
No. How about you, Chris?
I think we've got it summed up. I think I'm full and I'm whole, and like to thank everybody for tuning in and all the comments, even the not so kind ones. Appreciate them all, and I forgive you for your judgments and your opinions, and look forward to talking to everybody next week. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.